What's happening, man?
How are you, brother? Thanks for having me.
Where are you at the moment?
Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay, Florida. Yes, land on the East Coast about a day or two ago.
Nice, super busy, hanging out with Ben.
Yeah, discipline camp. Now preparing for some seminars we got planned. It's easier to do it face to face, so hopped on a flight and we'll hang out now for the better part of the month.
Awesome. Sounds like
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So we're going to get into it, man, because we've only got 20 minutes. But obviously, the reason we're on a call is we're going to really deep dive into your section of the transformation blueprint, which is all about performance and the effect that that has on physique change and a transformation. Um, Give us your point of view on, and I guess why performance is so important in regards to, say, a transformation.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in like transformations, we worry. I mean, we worry about the simple balance of energy in and energy out, right? And we just think of like calories, and we worry about diet, we worry about lifestyle, and that's all well and good, and it's all necessary. But we want to set a framework for that energy out component that's going to set the stage, obviously for long term success, past the initial transformation challenge, and set them up with habits and movement strategies that'll find them well into their lifestyle, but also into their training long term and their continued results past the transformation challenge. But it also sets the stage hormonally. It sets the stage for your nervous system. It sets the stage for what stimulus you're exactly trying to recover from. So being able to quantify and put as fine a point on the performance aspect in the gym as we can is going to help us better predict our results. And then having that fundamental understanding will better allow us to adjust on the fly when things don't go according to plan.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's super important as well. And I think when you start to go into that realm of becoming an expert, and like one of the reasons we're creating this blueprint is to give people an insight into actually what it takes. But if you do want to put yourself out there as an expert, it's looking outside the norm as well. And especially as a coach, if you want to differentiate yourself from the pack, I think looking deep into things that are outside what most coaches would only focus on and I think performance is probably one of those things that on the, when we look at, they say, the average range of personal trainers that are working out of a gym or kind of coming new into the industry, it's probably something that they don't think is as important, right? But when we look at the grand scheme of things, it can be, super, super important.
Yeah, I think it's paramount, man. Like if you can't if you can't qualify a stimulus, you can't quantify a stimulus. So if we're not performing and we're not executing on a consistent basis in a means that, or in a way that's going to allow us to continue long term to do so, then everything else, in my opinion, is a moot point. I think really nailing the performance aspect is going to, long term, give you the results you want to see past the transformation challenge. But even in the acute short term phases where we're trying to make these like drastic changes, for lack of a better word, the best way to do that is to be able to perform day in, day out to the highest standard.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so we're going to jump into your first principle, and that's assessment. Do you want to elaborate on that and give us some info and deep dive?
Sure. I mean, the assessment is basically figuring out where, from a functional standpoint, your client is starting at, right? Like that's going to be the bedrock in which you build your programming on. It's going to be the bedrock in which you manage your expectations of the client, and it's going to be how you start to create efficient programming, right? Like if you don't want to start someone too advanced without a proper assessment, you don't want to start someone too remedial with a proper assessment. I think that can be equally as detrimental to the progress in the short-term transformation. So having a very clear, high-resolution picture of where they are functioning, where their initial starting point is, and then that gives us a baseline to retest against. Because if we're looking to improve performance as a means of accessing better body composition or improved body composition, then when we go to reassess later on, we want to see strong correlations in the improvements we've made and then the objective outcome of improved body composition. So I think assessment is a pivotal starting point that's going to set the trajectory for how successful the course of our intervention is going to be.
Yeah, and of course, like the better you can assess someone, the the deeper the understanding you'll have of what it actually takes to get them the result.
Sure.
Yeah. And preparation is your next principle. So
yeah, I mean, this is going to actually it can be interpreted a lot of different ways and utilized a lot of different ways. Like for me, preparation comes down to, I mean, from a purely physical standpoint, or through purely physical lens, the idea of like making sure that on each day, based off the assessment, that client is prepared for the workload that's in front of them, right? So gaining access to the requisite mobility, stability, so they can utilize the strengths they have, and a means of constantly pushing the envelope, right? Like we don't want to be totally adaptive. We want to be constantly pushing a stimulus, especially in a brief transformation challenge where we're going to maybe look to push a little bit harder in this block or fly as close to the sun as we can, making sure that they're prepared, whether that's, I look at it very much through a movement lens, making sure that they have the mobility, the stability, and the strength to execute each workout based off of their initial assessment, based off of smart programming off that assessment. But even things like, again, like you said, thinking outside the box, like making sure they're prepared psychologically, making sure they're prepared neurologically, making sure they're getting enough sleep, making sure they understand how does this exercise fit in the workout? How does this workout fit in the week? How does this week of training fit in the training block? Like if you can go 7 layers, 8 layers deep on every facet, every tool in your toolbox, you're going to get the buy-in from the clients that you're going to want to need, or that you're going to need to get the best results. So I think preparation, albeit through the physical lens and making sure we have the requisite mobility, stability, and strength for every training session to get the most out of the time we're spending with our clients. I think you can look at it a few different ways, and making sure that we're prepared from a mindset standpoint, we're prepared from a nutrition standpoint. So there's a lot to preparation, but I think that's going to be that's your opening salvo kind of into this back and forth of you and the client and getting them the best results they want.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you just made a good point as well. Like performance isn't just in the gym, it's kind of like outside as well. And how is this person's mind performing? And these types of things. And it's like when we're assessing, we want to look for these things as well. So like it's assessing, movement, function, these types of things, but also assessing, all right, well, where's this person at in regards to their mind? I think one of the big things that I like to focus on with my clients is the first thing we actually talk about is where they're currently at with their mindset. And is this person ready to go through this 12-week program, right? Because, or whatever it is, right? Like whatever you're taking them through. Because if they're not, the way the client experience is going to be totally different, right? Like in terms of, you might have a base or a usual process that you take someone through, but that's going to change based on the assessment. Because if someone's not ready to do this, then there might be a slower process or something, in regards to what you're putting them through as well.
I mean, stress is stress, right? And I think we need to understand that as trainers. And I think preparation will helps not only set the stage to evoke a requisite or a required stress to make progress, but it also tell us when and where we could potentially push too far. So I think preparation is huge when it comes to execution. Preparation is huge when it comes to recovery. So really, these are not arbitrary. These 5 principles are very much in the order they're in on purpose.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So the next one is integration.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can kind of look at this in a lot of different ways, right? This is where we bridge the gap from preparation to execution. So, you have clients who are coming to you for, they want a good workout, right? But there's a difference between efficacy and effectiveness that I think as trainers we really need to take on and we need to own. Like we need to understand that there's a psychological component to the client leaving feeling like they had a good workout, devoid of any real understanding of what that entails from a physiological standpoint. But long story short, you don't want to waste all their time. Correct. Integrate in with programming, effective programming, periodization, exercise selections that'll allow clients to really drop it into gear to pursue subjective difficulty without being objectively heavy or hard, right? And I think that's a bit of an art form in itself, where you self-govern their output based off of smart exercise selection and strategies in programming. So you're not trying to holding them back. You're allowing them to exert and be at a point of high exertion relative to their subjective baseline. But behind the scenes, you're integrating, you're orchestrating behind the scenes more of a bigger picture with every workout. So, integration is going to be, how do you progress mobility? How do you progress stability? How do you progress strength, right? By means of really smart exercise selection based off your initial assessment, based off how prepared the client is. Now, when we look at that integrated piece, it really allows us a bit of latitude and creativity to really hone in and bespoke tailor each program to the individual.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you're looking at it from that standpoint as well, like it really, that the integration side of things for me, like when you're explaining that, really gives, like you said, it really bridges that gap, but it also gives me for me, it's like, well, that's a massive insight into why performance is actually so important, right? Like output, right? Like it's like, if you can't get someone to give their maximal output, then their results are going to be hindered.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next one is execution.
Yeah. And this is where the rubber hits the road, man. And I think this is where you actually get to reap the benefit of the steps prior. It's if you've put in the forethought, if you've put in kind of the cerebral approach to the first three steps that come before it. Execution is where it gets fun, right? This is where you kind of get to see the manifestations of your work, of your programming, and this is what the client's here for. And execution can be everything from, again, the psychological of like what drives this person in the gym. I look at it more through a physical lens of like being very concrete in the expectations and the standards in which movements are going to be performed, right? And not allowing clients to develop bad habits out of the gate, especially when you have a new client with them, like a very young training age. You have a really unique opportunity to set the stage and develop habits that they carry on with them into their life forever. So, with the goal being transformation, it's like you don't want to try and skate by and just worry about the output. I think surgical execution is going to make sure that every time that this person wants to go through a transformation, they can do so, and they can do so more efficiently than the last time. Because if you just start to carve in and appreciate these good techniques, they're going to prolong their lifespan in the gym. They're going to increase their output tremendously. They're going to become wildly more efficient, and they're going to put on muscle mass and burn fat at the same time. So I think execution is not about just having the move for an hour. Again, efficacy versus effectiveness, quality versus quantity. It's like, get them to move right first, and then have them gain traction in their execution. Then once you gain traction, you can floor it, and you can really open up and let them kind of run, let them kind of show their horsepower. But I think execution, having a mindful eye, being conscious, being aware, being in the room of how each one of these, one of your compound lifts, your high return yield or your high yield lifts are going to, how they're being performed, and making sure that your client is held to a standard at every workout.
100%. I think that's another really awesome point, is like looking at the smaller picture and the bigger picture of what you just said. Like the bigger picture is, you want to make an impact as a trainer. Yeah. Like on the long-term side of things, like you said, like if you get this person executing with high efficiency, that carries on for the rest of their life. You don't, and that should be the goal. Yeah. Like you say you only have a certain amount of time with someone. It's like, well, you even from a business standpoint, like if you're actually making an impact on someone's life and what happens, not just while they're with you, but when they go away, right? Like the return on that investment, whether you're expecting that or not, hopefully not, but it's going to be, better. And I think that's the goal, right? Like that's the goal, is to, like, if you can impact a lot more people on a higher level, right? At the end of the day, it's, and we've talked about this before, but it's the compounding effect. Yeah. Like the more people you impact at a higher level, it will come back and you will get rewarded for it, but you don't want to expect that either. Like that should just be the goal.
Yeah.
Cool. So the last one is reassessment, right? So kind of almost what you were talking about in point one.
Yeah, and I think this is where we need to lose the ego. I mean, this is where we need to have some humility and understand why we're doing this. We're not doing it for ourselves. We're not out to prove our own concepts. We're out to seek results for our clients, and whatever those results may be. So again, having a proper assessment allows us, when we're retrospectively assessing or reassessing upon completion of a program, where can we burn off dead wood in the programming? Where can we be more efficient? Where can we learn from our programming? Where can we learn from that client experience and archive and begin to notice and recognize trends rather than just running people through the same cookie cutter? Like, this is what makes training scientific, right? Control your variables. You have a hypothesis, you have a subject, you intervene with your methods, and then you always have to reassess, right? So I think having a good a fundamental starting point from a good assessment, and then reassessing against those objective outcomes after the transformation is over, it's only going to further your success as a trainer as you and begin to develop strategies for all different types, all different body types, all different ages, genders, goals, whatever. And that's just gonna sharpen the axe, right? So I think reassessment and having that moment of introspection after a client's completed their 12-week transformation that's what's going to keep the engine moving forward, rather than falling into a rut or falling into dogma and falling into methods and cookie cutter models of training. It's like there's so much diversity physiologically, logically from client to client, that the more people that you can impact, it's compounding. The more people you'll be able to impact if you have that moment of reassessment, that moment of introspection to look at your programming. Where could you be better, right? Where could you make this better? Where could you have put 14 weeks of results into 12 weeks, right? And really trying to streamline your processes and not be afraid to let go of things that you think you know, right? So I think that's a huge part of the reassessment. Again, it'll have ramifications in a positive manner in your business, but through the vessel of having positive ramifications in the results you have with your clients.
For sure. And I think when we look at even just having this conversation, it really rams home why education is actually so important, and why it should be the pillar for all personal trainers to grow their business on the back of. It's just like, when you can put that level of effort in, people see that, and people, that's something that a lot of people want to be a part of and want to have something to do with, whether it's from an educational standpoint or literally being coached by someone like yourself, right? Like it's this is kind of, and again, like, this is why we have someone like yourself who's an educator, who's doing the things you're doing. But again, like the pillar of that is education, and understanding the benefit of education and why that should be everyone's goal.
Yeah, I mean, at the level at the client, man, like, the devil's in the details. All they see is reps and sets, right? And you really need to maestro and orchestrate something that is special. And every time you can reassess and make sure that you're keeping everything in balance and you're not getting too dogmatic in your approach, all your incoming are going to benefit from that.
Cool, man. Awesome. Love that. Can you give us a 1-minute wrap up of, again, just kind of wrapping up everything that we've gone through, and like really hitting home why performance is key to